Alrighty, how's it going? Mrs. Camp's AP Psychology class of 2016. Today we are going to be talking about Chapter 10 in your book, which is titled Motivation and Emotion. Let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to be talking about are motivational theories and concepts. Now, like many things that we have in psychology, there are very many different theories. Three of them that we are going to touch on are drive theories, incentive theories, and evolutionary theories. First up, drive theories. They all come from Walter Cannon in 1932. When he said that organisms seek to maintain homeostasis. And Clark Hall, which we're going to touch on in the next slide, built on that in the 40s and 50s, and he made his own definition of a drive. What we know that now is an internal state of tension that motivates an organism to engage in activities that should reduce tension. Now, what we are going to use as an example of this is hunger. So, when you have no food, you have a discomfort. Now, that discomfort creates an internal tension, which is your drive that motivates you to eat food. It's easy enough. And also, one more thing that we want to point out are drive theories don't account for everything, because think of all the times you've eaten something without hungry. So, drive theories are good for some certain situations, but there are also other situations that they don't apply to. The second one we're going to be talking about are incentive theories. Now, this is where external stimuli regulate motivational states. So, the external stimuli in this example are money and appraisal. They motivate you to succeed, not the internal drive to do well or something. And there's always battles between drives versus incentives. It's kind of like a push versus pull. An internal state of tension, which are the drives, push people, and incentives pull people into doing something. So, like the no food gives you hunger, which makes you eat, but also, if you do well at your job, you could get money. There are two different battles. And the third one are evolutionary theories. Now, this is just like every other evolutionary theory that we've ever studied in psychology. It all touches on natural selection. So, natural selection favors behaviors that maximize reproductive success. Now, next slide. I want to touch more on Clark Hall. He was the man that gave the first definition to a drive, which really explains drive theories to a T. And we put that he derived that organisms seek to maintain homeostasis, which is the basis of all drive theories, and the first recorded definition of a drive. The second main topic that we are going to talk about in this chapter is the motivation of hunger and eating. Now, we have a funny little quote, "If you can dream it, you can do it," from Walt Disney. That's not too applicable to this, but as the chapter as a whole, or from the chapter as a whole, that's very applicable. Now, the first factor that is a motivation of hunger and eating is the biological factor. Now, we want to touch on the part of the brain that's responsible for the feeling of hunger, which is the hypothalamus. And there are two parts of the hypothalamus that we need to talk about. First, the lateral hypothalamus. That's responsible for the actual feeling of hunger. And the ventromedial hypothalamus, another part of the hypothalamus, is responsible for feeling full. Now, third bullet point. If either of these were to function abnormally, fluctuations in weight would most likely occur as feelings of hunger or fullness would not occur. So you don't feel that, or you feel that you're too hungry, you'd eat more. You don't feel that you're full, then again you'd eat more. And it could be said conversely to lose weight. So that's why we're saying that weight fluctuations are somewhat normal. Also, glucose levels affect hunger as well. So that's just another thing that could affect, another biological factor, as the heading states, that could affect the feeling of hunger and or your eating. When the glucose levels are high, satisfactory feelings are felt, so you're not hungry. When low, your hunger increases. And also, three more hormones in your body play a role as well: insulin, ghrelin, and leptin. Almost the same as glucose, but they have their own individual meanings. The next thing we're going to be talking about are environmental factors. Now, the easiest way to explain this is basically just the availability of food in your environment. Plateability is the better the food tastes, the more people will want to eat it. Also, along with that is the quantity. So if you have a large quantity of food in front of you, you're going to eat more. It's very, very applicable in different situations. Basically, smaller portions, less amount of food consumed. Larger portions, more amount of food consumed. Also, another environmental factor is variety. Humans and animals increase their consumption when a greater variety of foods are available. Basically just like quantity, but different varieties. And also the presence of others. Now, social eating is a very big problem, and you're going to see that in this statistic. On average, people eat 44% more when eating with other people than eating alone. That could be that's a great factor for the motivation of hunger and eating more. And when two people eat alone together, they tend to eat similar amounts. So you can equate that to like a date. You don't want to eat more than your date. And also, when women eat in the presence of a male that they don't know very well, they reduce their intake. More environmental factors. Learn preferences and habits. Now, you might say, what the heck? How is this like an environmental factor when it's your behavior? The second bullet point explains this very well. Would you be interested in eating maggots, snakes, or eels? The second bullet point explains this very well. Think about it. Would you be interested in eating maggots, snakes, or eels? No, you wouldn't, because that's not a part of our culture and that's not what we eat. But if I said pizza, chicken, or ice cream, you'd be like, heck yeah, I love those kinds of foods. This preference comes from where you live in the world, and also different cultures have different environmental factors of what food they eat. Some cultures, you never know, might eat maggots, snakes, or eels. That's definitely a possibility, but our culture does not, and that's why it's an environmental factor and not a behavioral thing. Also, people prefer familiar foods. This is going along with your culture again. The foods that you know very well, like a chicken nugget or something, you're bound to eat more than like escargot or something, because maybe you've never tried it before, so of course you're going to eat more chicken nuggets than escargot. Also, young children are more likely to try something when an adult tries it first. This could be very good for later in your life if you need a kid to try something. Try it first and maybe they'll do it. Also, if an adult forces them to try it, they're not going to do it. So, there's like a balance there. You don't want to force them to do it, but you want to try it in front of them so they might do it. And also on the right, obesity is the condition of being overweight. It's an actual like syndrome. We can find if you're obese by, finding your body mass index, and that is your weight over your height squared, and if you get a value of over 30, that means you are obese. Now, your set point is a weight at which your body finds stability. It's kind of hard to say this when your body is like you're still in puberty and you're still changing, but this is more for adults. Say you're 5'10", 170 pounds. If you've been there for a while, that's probably your set weight. You don't have to eat very much to stay there, and you don't have to like exercise very much to stay there. That's just kind of like where you are. So people that don't exercise and just go normally, and if they stay at a certain weight, that's their set point weight. Basically, that's equilibrium, you might say. The third main point the book talks about is probably the most uncomfortable to talk about, but I guess I got stuck with it, is sexual motivation and behavior. Now we're going to be talking about the human sexual response and its 4 phases, we call them. The first is the excitement phase, and as you can put it together, the level of physical arousal rises rapidly. What that includes is muscle tension, respiration rate, heart rate, and blood pressure. Now, there's also another process that goes on in your body during this phase, which is vasocongestion. In males, it has penile erection and swollen testes, and in women, it includes hardening of the clitoris, expansion of the vaginal walls, and vaginal lubrication. The second phase in the human sexual response is the plateau phase. Now, the physiological arousal continues to rise, but at a slower pace, and there are different things that happen in men and women. In women, the tightening of the vaginal opening, there is tightening, and in men, they may secrete a bit of fluid, which is not sperm. Now, continued is the third phase, which we call the orgasm phase. Now, this is when the sexual arousal reaches a peak intensity, and also this comes with increased heart rate, respiration rate, and blood pressure. Also, there are gender differences in the orgasm phase. Women are more likely than men to be multi-orgasmic, and also in the book there was a survey that stated that 78% of men responded that they have orgasms regularly with their sexual partner, and only 28% of women. The fourth and final phase in the human sexual response is the resolution phase. Now, there is a refractory period, as you can see in the graph. That is the time following an orgasm, which males are largely unresponsive to further stimulation. Now, this can vary with age, and it could last from a few hours to a few minutes. The last part of the sexual motivation and behavior section is the mystery of sexual orientation. Now, if you don't know what sexual orientation is, the basic definition is a person's preference for emotional and sexual relationships with individuals of the same sex, the other sex, or either sex. The same sex we call homosexuals, the other sex we call heterosexuals, and either sex we call bisexuals. Now, like every other part of psychology, as I've stated, there are many theories of the mystery of sexual orientation. Evolutionary theories state that when we look at evolutionary theories, these theories have garnered little support because they basically come from Freud, as weird of a guy he was. His perspective, I'm talking about Freud. Freud's perspective was that a gay male a man is more likely to become gay when he is raised by a weak, ineffectual father and a close binding mother. Now, as you know, there's many other situations that could determine a person's sexual orientation besides a man or a father. In this situation, that's not the macho man that we portray a father to be, I guess. And there's also behavioral theories that are grouped with evolutionary theories. Homosexuality is a learned preference after same-sex stimuli have been paired. So you have that behavior of being a homosexual after your homosexual stimuli, we'll call them, after they have been paired and matched. And also the third type of theory in the mystery of sexual orientation are the biological theories. Now there's actually a cool study in 1991 by Bailey and Pillard that if you have a subject of a gay man, they found that 52% of their subjects, if they have to be twins, 52% of the identical twins were gay, 22% of the fraternal twins, the other brother is gay. I'm talking about the other brother in this situation. And if they're adopted siblings, 11% of their adoptive brothers were gay. Now, what this shows is that there's a genetic association with homosexuality because the identical twins are more likely to be gay than the fraternal and adoptive twins. So they have the same genes, more likely to be gay.
Achievement. In search of excellence. Individual differences in achievement. Any higher achiever, the need for achievement stays constant. For example, Abraham Lincoln reading in darkness under cannon. Thematic assertion test, or the TAT, is a projective test that measures an individual's need for achievement. Subjects respond to vague, ambiguous stimuli in ways that may reveal personal motives. Situational determinants. Situational factors can also influence achievement strivings. Atkinson's model, the pursuit of achievement increases as the probability and incentive value goes up. For example, you won't try hard in a class if the teacher gives an unfair test or if good grades are not required for your major. The elements of emotional experience. Emotion involves three bases: a subjective conscious experience or cognitive, bodily arousal or physiological, characteristic overt expressions or behavioral. The cognitive component includes emotion. In the cognitive component, emotion is a highly personal subjective experience. Emotions are automatic reactions that are hard to regulate. In the behavioral component, body language is a nonverbal behavior that expresses emotions. The 6 fundamental emotions are happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. In the physiological component, autonomic arousal, emotions are generally accompanied by visceral arousal. For example, knot in your stomach or a lump in your throat. In the autonomic nervous system, responses to emotion can vary with each individual. Theories of emotion. In the James Lange theory, the conscious experience of emotion results from one's perception of autonomic arousal. In the Cannon-Bard theory, emotion occurs when the thalamus sends signals simultaneously to the cortex and autonomic nervous system. In the Schachtter's two-factor theory, emotion depends on autonomic arousal and cognitive interpretation of that arousal. In the evolutionary theory of emotion, emotion is response to stimuli that evolved through natural selection. Thanks. Any questions? Follow me on Twitter and slide in my DMs for more exciting information.
Bye.